Growing up in my family often felt like existing in the shadows. My sister's needs, desires, and achievements were always the priority, while mine barely registered. Birthdays came and went without fanfare for me, sometimes forgotten entirely, while hers were celebrated with parties, gifts, and endless praise. I learned early that my accomplishments, no matter how hard I worked, would be met with a polite nod or a distracted smile, while hers were declared worthy of admiration and pride. I remember the science fair in 4th grade. I spent weeks perfecting my project, staying up late to make sure every detail was flawless. When I presented it, my parents offered a quick "good job," then immediately turned to ask my sister if she had finished her painting, showering her with excitement that left me shrinking in the corner. Even simple victories, like bringing home a good grade or winning a small contest, were met with indifference, while my sister's smallest efforts were magnified. I began to internalize the message. My presence was secondary, my feelings were less important, and my successes were almost irrelevant. Yet, beneath the quiet disappointment, something in me stirred a determination that no one else seemed to notice. I started keeping small journals, writing down my ideas and dreams, nurturing ambitions that I would pursue quietly, silently, until the world would have no choice but to see me. In those unnoticed moments, I learned to build my own resilience, holding on to the hope that someday my worth would be undeniable. By the time high school rolled around, my life had become a cycle of constant effort and quiet endurance. I tutored younger students after school, sometimes missing the rare family dinners, to earn extra money and bolster my college applications. Nights were spent poring over textbooks, writing essays, and submitting scholarship applications, while my sister effortlessly attended expensive classes, traveled for competitions, or indulged in luxuries I could only dream of. I remember feeling a sharp pang of envy as she posted pictures from her summer programs, piano recitals, art workshops, and trips abroad, while I balanced 3 part-time jobs just to pay for the essentials. Every recognition I achieved, every small victory, seemed invisible in comparison. I wondered constantly if my parents even noticed the sacrifices I was making, or if I was destined to remain invisible forever. Am I ever going to matter to them? I whispered to myself late one night, the quiet hum of my desk lamp filling the silence. Despite it all, I refused to give up. My mind remained focused on the one thing that might finally validate me: earning a scholarship that could not be ignored. And then, one ordinary afternoon, I checked my email and froze. There it was, a notification that I had been awarded a full $100,000 scholarship to a university I had only dreamed of attending. My hands shook, and my heart raced. Could this be the moment that finally changes everything? The email from the university felt surreal as I stared at the screen, unable to breathe for a few moments. A $100,000 scholarship, full tuition, room, and board was something I had dreamed of in secret, scribbled in journals, and whispered to myself in the dark. I knew I had worked for it, but seeing it officially awarded felt like a quiet triumph. When I told my parents at dinner, the way they froze was almost comical, forks suspended midair, eyes widening, and the silence stretching painfully. "Wait, are you serious?" My father finally managed, his voice tight, disbelief etched across his face. My mother's lips pressed together, glancing at my sister as if she were the one supposed to have accomplished something extraordinary. My sister, meanwhile, leaned back in her chair with a bored expression, tossing her hair. "Cool," she said flatly, already scrolling through her phone. I could feel the familiar sting of indifference, but now it cut differently. I had earned something they couldn't take away, and for the first time, I realized I held a quiet kind of power. With this scholarship, I wasn't just a shadow in their eyes anymore. I had financial leverage, freedom they hadn't anticipated, and the ability to make choices that didn't depend on their approval. The imbalance was finally shifting, and I felt a thrill of anticipation at the thought of what this could mean. After the scholarship announcement, every family interaction felt charged, like walking on a thin wire. My parents no longer ignored me entirely, but their attention was sharp and cautious, laced with subtle discouragements. "Are you sure you can handle that course load?" my father asked one evening, a faint frown creasing his brow. My mother chimed in, "It's a lot of money, you know, for a school far away." Even my sister, who had once been indifferent, began tossing barbed comments. "Don't get too cocky, you're still new to all this." Their words were meant to destabilize me, to remind me of my place, but they had the opposite effect. For the first time, I understood what it meant to hold quiet power, to feel the shift from powerless observer to someone in control of my own future. I began sketching plans in my mind, how to leverage the scholarship, where to apply for internships, and how to build a life that didn't require their approval. Then came the unexpected icing on the cake, a high-paying job offer from a company I had admired since I started researching career paths. Holding the offer letter in my hands, I felt the weight of years of neglect lift, replaced with a steady, exhilarating sense of agency. The rules had changed, and I was finally in a position to dictate my own terms. The moment I held the official job offer in my hands, my chest tightened with a mix of disbelief and triumph. It wasn't just the salary, it was recognition of my hard work, my resilience, and the countless nights I had spent proving myself to no one. I paced my room, rehearsing how I would tell my parents, imagining their reactions, savoring the thought of their mouths falling open. When I finally brought it up over dinner, their reactions were instantaneous. My father froze mid-bite, eyes wide, as if the words had physically stopped him. You got the job?" he stammered, voice uneven. My mother set down her fork, glancing at my sister with a flicker of unease. "That's impressive," she said, though the tone carried disbelief rather than pride. My sister let out a low whistle, trying to mask irritation with feigned casualness. "Well, didn't see that coming. They're cold." Stunned responses only amplified my excitement. I had their attention now, but I could feel the tension building, the discomfort lingering in the air. I smiled inwardly, knowing this was my moment to decide, reveal everything at once, making it public, or tease it slowly to heighten the impact. The anticipation was intoxicating, and for the first time, I truly felt the thrill of holding the power in my hands. That night, I celebrated alone in my room, a modest triumph, a cup of tea, my favorite playlist, and the job offer tucked beside my journal. I allowed myself to smile without restraint, thinking about how far I'd come. Memories of my childhood surfaced, birthdays forgotten, school achievements ignored, my parents cheering loudly for my sister while I clung to silent hope. I remembered the recital where she played a single note and received standing ovation, while my own performance barely drew a glance. The contrast stung, but it also fueled a quiet fire within me. I reflected on all the nights I had sacrificed sleep, the weekends spent tutoring instead of traveling, the moments I had suppressed disappointment to maintain peace. Now, holding my offer, I realized those sacrifices were not meaningless. They had built me, shaped me, and positioned me for this moment. I imagined their faces when they would finally see me succeed on my own terms. The disbelief, the subtle panic when they realized their favoritism could no longer diminish my worth. For the first time, I felt the thrill of anticipation, knowing that a revelation was coming, one that would upend the hierarchy they had so carefully constructed. My heart raced, not with fear, but with the power of knowing that my story was about to change forever. Dinner that evening was charged with a tension I hadn't felt in years. I arrived with a quiet confidence, carefully choosing my words as the conversation flowed. I was thinking about applying for a leadership program at work, I mentioned casually, letting my parents catch my glance, but keeping my tone light. My father froze mid-bite, fork hovering in the air, while my mother stiffened, exchanging a quick, uneasy look with my sister. "Oh, really?" my father said slowly, eyes narrowing. My sister rolled her eyes, flicking her hair back. "Well, I'm sure you'll manage, I guess." I smiled politely, letting the comment hang in the air, watching their discomfort grow. "Yeah, it's exciting," I added, leaning back slightly, especially after getting some recent news about the scholarship. "It really opens doors I didn't expect." My parents shifted in their seats, the air thick with awkwardness, as my sister muttered, "Figures you get lucky." I kept my tone neutral, letting the words sink in while they struggled to process the reversal of roles. The tension was palpable, a subtle reminder that the family dynamic was no longer under their control. I felt a quiet thrill. Power was finally mine, and the real revelation was still to come. I began asserting myself in ways small but deliberate. I paid for my own meals at restaurants where my parents had always footed the bill, booked my own travel for weekend trips, and even signed up for activities without asking for their approval. Each action felt like a quiet declaration. I was no longer a dependent shadow in their world. My parents' discomfort grew with every choice I made. Furtive glances, tight smiles, and subtle comments that failed to mask their unease. My sister tried to compete, flaunting minor purchases and social events, but it all felt hollow compared to the quiet satisfaction I carried. The subtle shift was intoxicating. For the first time, I felt the pull of FOMO on them, the fear that they were missing out on controlling my life, on keeping me in my place. At a small dinner with a family friend, the tipping point came. "I'm really impressed with how far you've come," the friend said, raising their glass toward me, eyes sparkling with genuine admiration. The table went silent. My parents' mouths parted slightly, as if words had abandoned them, while my sister's gaze hardened. I smiled inwardly, savoring the first public acknowledgement of my growing influence. Knowing that this was only the beginning, the day of the family gathering arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration as I stepped into the room. Everyone chatted around me, oblivious to the storm I was about to unleash. I waited until a lull, then spoke casually, almost as if it were a footnote in conversation. "Oh, by the way, I'll be starting at the firm next month, and the university awarded me a full scholarship," I said, letting the words hang in the air. The reaction was instantaneous. My parents froze, eyes wide, breath shallow, as if someone had yanked the floor from under them. My sister gasped, clutching her drink, lips trembling with disbelief and envy. "Wait, what? How did you even?" The room seemed to shift, every eye drawn to me. The quiet child who had always been overlooked, now standing center stage. I noticed the subtle changes, the whispers, the glances, the admiration mingled with shock. For once, I was celebrated while the family who had ignored me struggled to regain footing. The contrast was stark, the underappreciated child now commanding attention, the previously weak and overlooked sibling holding undeniable power. As I smiled and nodded graciously, internal pride coursed through me. This was no longer a private triumph. The world, or at least this small one, had finally acknowledged my worth. Their reactions were a mixture of shock, guilt, and denial, each emotion flickering across their faces like a series of poorly masked truths. My father ran a hand over his face, muttering, I didn't realize," while my mother's lips pressed tightly together, her eyes darting to my sister as if to silently plead for support. My sister, still clutching her glass, hissed under her breath, "This can't be real. You didn't even ask us for help." I leaned back, letting the words wash over me, savoring the reversal that had finally come. "I didn't need your help," I said calmly, my voice steady but sharp. "I worked for this. I've earned it on my own." Silence fell across the room, heavy and uncomfortable. My parents exchanged uneasy glances, guilt prickling beneath their attempts at composure. I reflected on years of being overlooked, birthdays ignored, achievements dismissed, countless small moments where I learned that my presence didn't matter. Yet, now, the narrative had flipped. I felt empowered, recognized, and morally vindicated, holding a quiet authority they could no longer undermine. Their denial only highlighted the contrast. I had grown from the powerless child into someone whose success commanded respect, and their discomfort confirmed it. I decided to test the boundaries of my new independence, starting with subtle but deliberate moves. At the next family dinner, I offered to cover the bill, a gesture that had once been unthinkable in our household. My parents exchanged uneasy glances, their usual authority quietly crumbling under the weight of my self-sufficiency. I signed up for weekend trips and events without consulting anyone, each choice a reminder that I no longer needed their approval. My sister attempted to reclaim attention, flaunting minor luxuries or casual insults, but I remained composed, letting my actions speak louder than their words. Every small triumph, the financial control, the freedom to make decisions, the visible confidence was a quiet assertion of dominance that left them uncomfortably aware of the shift. I noticed the subtle tremor in my father's smile and the flicker of envy in my sister's eyes, and for the first time, I felt fully vindicated. The audience of one my family could no longer diminish me, and the satisfaction of finally asserting myself was both intoxicating and deeply cathartic. Just when I thought the balance had finally shifted, my sister and parents attempted to claw back control. At a casual brunch with extended family, my sister whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Don't get too full of yourself. You only got lucky with that scholarship and job. Anyone could have done it." My parents exchanged uneasy glances, and my mother muttered, "Maybe you should have asked for guidance first." I paused, letting their words hang in the air, and smiled faintly. "Actually," I said, voice calm but deliberate, "I didn't need guidance. In fact, I just signed a contract for a project that will triple my annual income, and I was able to do it without any help." Guests rippled through the table. My sister froze mid-bite, eyes wide, while my parents' faces turned pale. I continued, casually recounting the details of a high-profile internship and a networking opportunity that would expand my career beyond anything they could have imagined. Each revelation landed like a strategic blow, dismantling their attempts at belittlement. The contrast was stark. The child they once ignored now outshined them publicly, leaving them speechless. I felt a rush of satisfaction, knowing that their discomfort was evidence of my power, and that the twist had secured my place not just financially, but socially and morally at the center of my own life. The final family gathering of the year was set in a bustling hall, full of relatives and friends, and I knew this was the moment everything would come to a head. As conversations buzzed around me, my parents were visibly tense, aware that I held the attention now. When my father finally cleared his throat and said, "We're proud of what you've accomplished," it felt both awkward and necessary, a reluctant acknowledgement of the years they had overlooked me. My mother nodded, voice tight. "You've really made us realize how hard you've worked." Even my sister, usually quick to dismiss me, offered a hesitant, I guess I didn't expect all this." The moral of the story was clear without me needing to spell it out. Neglect and favoritism can never truly stifle determination, and genuine effort demands recognition. Internally, I felt a swell of satisfaction, a quiet pride that no one could diminish. The reversal was complete. Those who once held authority now acknowledged my success, leaving me firmly in control of my narrative. The tension dissolved, replaced with cathartic release, and I finally understood the power of perseverance and the sweet justice of being seen. Sitting alone later that evening, I let myself breathe and reflect on everything that had led to this moment. The years of being overlooked, dismissed, and undervalued flashed through my mind. Birthdays forgotten, achievements ignored, endless quiet sacrifices. And yet, here I was, finally empowered, financially independent, and morally vindicated. I felt a strange mixture of triumph and tenderness, knowing that my love for my family hadn't disappeared, even if the recognition had come late. Boundaries I had long yearned to set were now firmly in place, a quiet shield against the neglect of the past. I realized that my worth had never depended on their validation. It had always been within me, waiting for the chance to surface. There was still a bittersweet ache knowing they had missed so much, but it was tempered by the knowledge that I had claimed my life on my own terms. In that moment, I understood the final lesson. Resilience and self-respect can turn years of pain into power. And sometimes, the justice you seek most deeply comes from living boldly and unapologetically.